Okay, so the Diablo 4 Server Slam beta just got over with this past weekend, and I wanted to take the time to give my initial and hopefully thorough thoughts on everything that I'd taken a part of during that beta. So I had played the open beta a few months ago for about as long as I was able to, because I was also working at the time through that entire weekend, so made it very difficult to be able to do. I think I was able to still get around like 15 to 20 hours on the open beta. I was able to get about like 10 hours for this one. I was able to make it to max rank on this beta as well as that one. I mained the Barbarian because it was still one of my favorite classes from any of the past Diablo games that I've played. I was big into Diablo 2 and 3. Diablo 3, I played a lot of it. I basically only played the Barbarian for that one. So that's what I was expecting to do with this one as well. So with that part out of the way, let's get into the video. Diablo 4 is structured into multiple different things you can do throughout this pretty massive open world, and even on the limited play area for this beta, there is still a pretty large set of regions that you could play through. This isn't going to be any of the story stuff, so don't worry about that, because this is just going through my thoughts on the beta itself, the performance, the challenges, the frustrations. And I will be going through the transmog system because it's one of my favorite things that I could do in an online game to make myself look as good as I possibly can for absolutely no other reason than I'm a fashion hunter and I just want to look cool. I want the old way of playing games where, you know, you've got a red gauntlet, you've got a purple helmet, you've got white pants, and you've got black boots. But you have to stick with all of those weird miscolored items and everything because the stats were good. Well, I want the stats to be good, but I also want to look good. I would rather wear something that I like the look of and take that hit to my stats because I don't want to look like that. Well, also, I want to talk about my experience in some of the world events, the drop rate changes that was made, a little bit of the skills that I used, and the respecking controversy that came around with it that's still going on to this day. We really got to see about launch for that. I hope they change it. Also, I want to talk about Ashava, the world boss that, in order to get the cool looking horn collection item that goes on your mounts in the full game, was you had to beat Ashava at level 20 during this particular beta. I never got a chance to fight Ashava during the last beta. I just got to the max level to be able to get the alpha wolf pup for my backpack slot. So we're going to talk about that as well. So first part is Barbarian class. It was still too reliant on shouts. To get to that, my favorite skills from past Diablo games for Barbarians has been the attack speed increasing builds. For this one, I think Diablo 4 was Frenzy, where every attack stacks up an attack speed buff that you can just keep going and going and going until you get to that cap. This is what I did in Diablo 3. I was always loving playing that in the other betas for Diablo 4 as well, and I really wanted to be able to just it was familiar to me, so I kept going with it. Pairing that with Whirlwind, because I love being able to just spin into crowds and just do a whole bunch of damage that way. Using Leap to have the extra mobility in and out of combat. Using Stomp to stun all enemies in the area. Basically, I would leap in, land, stun everything, and then spin to win through the entire crowd, as long as you have enough fury, of course. I wanted to use the chains that grab and pull enemies, like being an MMO tank, because that's what I always played as, preparing for a fight. But I wasn't able to do that with the other abilities I had on my bar, and this is why. I had to keep all 3 shouts on my bar to keep myself alive during a few boss fights that I was having problems with. The Broodguard Spider was that boss. I died to her again, and again, and again, and again, and again. After almost 2 hours, I checked my recording of throwing myself at this brick wall only to be met with the same message. I would respec to try another skill here or there after every 3rd death or so because I wanted to try to be able to get through. It's like, okay, my build must not be cutting it. I'm going to switch it up to something else and go right back in and I'd be met with the same thing again. Now, it wasn't working for me, and I just thought, wow, that barbarian nerf must have hit harder than I thought. Then I remembered the nerf had to do with the shouts not being as strong now. The barbarian buff was that they had more base damage reduction now. Like, it was like a 10% flat damage reduction buff on your character. I just felt extremely fragile, like way more fragile than I did before. Sure, the spider gave me issues the last beta, but I think I probably had better gear back then because they were dropping better stuff at a lower level that I didn't have now. So I respect again. This time I gave myself, after the 2 hours of going through the entire thing, fighting this just 2 hours on just this boss and going through the dungeon to get to it, I gave myself all 3 shouts. I got all the extras for the shouts, the points that were like better for this shout, and then I also got the one that increases all my shouts duration. I think I put 1 point in there. My build was basically my frenzy attack, the leap, and the whirlwind, because I will not be without my lethal dancer spin, god damn it. Plus the 3 shouts. I forgot to record this part because I was so infuriated by the last 2 hours. I figured this would probably be a little better. The first step into the fight was me flying through the air, landing, stacking the frenzy up when I had a half of my fury, but I was full on frenzy stacks, popped all 3 shouts, started spinning. The spider's health went down so much faster than before. And I really didn't have to deal with the hordes of spiders too much because the shouts made the AoE take them out so much faster than my usual fights. And before I knew it, I had killed the spider my first try with this other build. I did not get it down below half health throughout that 2 hours. But even having the health bottles from killing the mobs and taking down each part of the spider's health, it was still leaps and bounds better having all 3 shouts on your hotbar than being without them. But having to respect to using the shouts to beat a boss doesn't really feel as good as they may want it to, because your shouts are fun and all, but I really want to be more flexible with my build and not rely on any type of meta that is already forming inside the game through these last 2 betas. I know a meta will always be the thing in these games, and it isn't to take away from that. I just want to be able to be viable enough with my own creation for my build, and not having half my build be something that like is universally agreed upon that you have to have these to be able to play this class. And that goes into the respec controversy that's going on. So going into the controversy behind the team's opinion that respecs ruin the game. I'm paraphrasing there. That's not exactly what they say, but I still want to say that their excuse for this is a load of crap. I understand what they think they're doing, but it doesn't really work well in practice when a live service game is constantly having each class being bounced around each other in each playstyle and each dungeon and each difficulty setting of each dungeon and each world tier. And if Blizzard's other live service games are anything to go by, looking at you, flavor of the month, class balancing, and WoW, that makes me worried for the end game of Diablo 4 and what it could possibly look like. Let's say you're playing with a build that you feel is doing really good for you, you're doing really well completing stuff, getting to the end game. Respecs are now insanely expensive, that you can't complete anything to get the gold needed to change that worthless skill to something that can make you actually be able to contribute to groups and bosses and world bosses and events again. So this is the problem of devs fighting against being able to redo your character skills in games. They always claim that, well, it makes you look and really think about your choices going into the end game, and you should really fine-tune your build by that point. It doesn't do that at all. What it does do is it puts more flooded traffic into Wowhead, Icy Veins, any other website that you can just Google Diablo 4 best class builds and just replicate what the other people are doing. And it's just cookie cutter builds, just whatever is the best to do something is what everybody, I don't mean everybody, I mean like probably 70% of the entire community is gonna go towards. So with people just replicating that, there's no point in experimenting when the dev team might just blow up all your hard work because balance. If somebody is just ever so slightly beating a boss with a build, and that build is doing extra good in groups or something, please don't punish the other players that are using that because of it. Find another solution that doesn't destroy somebody else's build. Let's say there's one skill that's overperforming, but some people are using that overperforming skill with a bunch of underperforming skills to be able to balance it out so they can play their own way. That's what you guys want, right? You want us to play in our own way. Please let us play in our own way then. So if there are things that are underperforming, maybe there are some skills that people just are not using, increase the effectiveness of those skills. Don't just blast something that's doing really good down into the ground, okay? It's a balance. That's why it's called balance, guys. You don't need to overdo it. If you want to keep the cost to respecking, then fine. Keep a cost to it, but don't make it so bad that you're backing your players into a corner and having the only option that they have is to quit playing because they can't afford the respec cost. Then they can't get the money for that respec because their class build isn't viable enough to do dungeons that give you money to do that. It is an endless cycle that really should not be a thing, and I really hope you guys can do something about that. Now we're going to talk about being a melee character against some of Diablo 4's bosses. So some, if not all, bosses can be a bullet hell kind of nightmare that just spirals out of control rather fast if you're not careful. The Brood Guard, for example, because I just cannot stop complaining about this bit. The spider boss spits out poison, spits out webs in this huge pattern that's in front of them, which makes it so you had to choose what you had to deal with. A little bit of poison damage, or... No! And just getting caught in one of those can put you pretty far behind in the fight because you're healing yourself out of this mosh pit that you were just forcibly invited to. It takes away from your budget of healing sippy cups that you may need to use the next time you accidentally step into. And the next one, and the next one. And maybe you can expertly run around some of them. Then you get hit with the poison. Then you get inside the roaming cloud of spiders that are summoned because why not? This is Diablo and their slogan is go to hell, which is something that you will be screaming throughout the entire boss fight. At least that's what I was doing. What was I talking about? Oh yes, being a melee against a boss that has every mechanic that has a vendetta against melee characters in video games. I just hate that the spider is like, okay, webs, the ads that that explode when you kill them. They deal damage, summon more spiders, which also spawn more webs, and a lot of times right in front of you. So you can go around the webs that you can see, but then these things just throw one directly under your feet, and then that mosh pit of spiders is roaming around, decides they miss your hugs, and they say, all right, bring it in, and they all group you. So far, though, the game has been incredibly solid and a shit ton of fun. Even though those rants about the Brood boss that I had, I still had fun with it. It was challenging enough to put you in your place while being fair. Bullshit. Enough to keep you engaged. Try again, and again, and again, for over 2 hours. So with that, let's talk about Ashava, because the Ashava fight was kind of like the point of this beta was get to level 20, fight Ashava, beat Ashava, and you get to have this really cool trophy that can hang on your mounts to be able to show off to all the people that didn't show up to this beta. I understand it. The problem with Ashava, though, is the problem with it's shared by some games, but a lot of other games have found a solution to it. And that is the anybody is allowed kind of world bosses when they have a limited number of player slots. This one's kind of a mixed bag for me. On one hand, I understand letting everybody be able to try to help in a world boss setting. You know, Guild Wars 2 does it, WoW kinda does it, Final Fantasy 14 does it. But on the other hand, the stat difference between a level 19 and 20 character and anything below 19 the stat difference is pretty big. And I don't know if the players have a legendary that actually does mix with their build quite well. Lucky bastard. Just no way a lower level player can hold up their end of the bargain for joining a world boss that only has 12 players that can fight it per instance. It's like if you're holding up a ceiling. And you need 4 people, 1 to hold up each corner of this ceiling. Wouldn't you want all 4 of them to be about the same height? If everybody is about 5'10", and one of them is 4 foot nothing, they aren't really able to hold up their part, are they? That's going to be a weird ceiling. Weird metaphor also, but weird metaphors aside, I think the dev team can make it so players must be a certain level minimum to participate in some of these world bosses. They can do whatever they want with the world events. They're not this big boss kind of thing. It's kind of the best option for this, but possibly having a bigger group size you can invite players into, and then you can just go fight the world bosses. But then that would also lead to abusing the system by just making a group with like 1 low level player, a bunch of high level players, and just snowball every single world boss and basically power level that low level through a whole bunch of farming. But I really don't know. Next. Now the performance was what I was really hoping was going to be better, because the open beta was horrendous for the performance. Some people didn't have a problem, and most people talk about the last day of the open beta having not so many issues, you know. First day you had login queues of hours because everybody was trying to get into it. This time, it was not that at all. It was like 10 times better than the open beta. In the open beta, when I played that, every like 10 to 30 seconds, my game would just have a quick little hitch. And it would keep happening the entire time. Like, you'd run into an area, it didn't look like there was many players there or anything, or even there was no players at all. You'd just be running, then you'd hit a 1 FPS hitch. Sometimes it was even longer times of hitching. I know that when my wife and I were playing the open beta, we'd go into an area where like our game would just completely lock up. It would just freeze for like 10 to 15 seconds. The other person wouldn't have an issue. They would already kill everything that was around us. Our game finally came to. Everything was dead. We're just standing there. It was terrible and frustrating to deal with. But this time around, I didn't have that until the second day. I played almost all day on Friday because I was off. On Saturday, though, Saturday was when it did start happening. If I have footage of it, I'll put it on screen right now. But it did happen here and there. It wasn't as bad. It still happened maybe like 5% of the time throughout the day on Saturday. I didn't play it all on Sunday because I had to go to work, and the beta was already done with by like I think noon or something like that, and I was already at work, so me getting off of work, I wasn't able to be able to play it. The next thing I want to talk about is the drop rates on the legendary and rare gear. So throughout the 8 or so hours of playtime that I had, I encountered my first legendary at about level 16 or 17, and it was a ring. It wasn't great by any means, but it was definitely better than what I had. Once I had gotten to level 19 and 20, though, legendary started dropping a little bit more, and I had a nice set. I think I had like 4 legendaries by the time I was getting ready for the first time I fought a Shava, which was the 11 o'clock one Central Time on Saturday night. I only fought a Shava twice. I was in World Tier 2 for the first Ashava fight, and anybody that knows, yeah, I was unaware that you should go to World Tier 1 to fight Ashava, because there's no differences in the rewards, and you're already level 20, so what do you need the experience extra for? You don't really need the money. Well, at least I didn't really need the money, because after Saturday night, I knew I wasn't going to be able to play anymore. Fought Ashava the first time, lost. Fought Ashava the second time. The next one spawned 3 hours after that one. Moved to World Tier 1, found a group that was doing it, killed it, had like 9 minutes left after that one. So I felt like the drop rates were in a good place, because by the time I hit level 20, I didn't have a legendary for every slot like I did during the open beta. Because the open beta, I hit 20, and I think I had all but 1 or 2 slots were all legendaries. Some of them weren't ones that went with my my play style, but they were legendaries nonetheless. And yes, even though I do feel like the drop rates are in a good place right now, I know of the farming strategy in the core castle stronghold. There'll always be things like that in games, but to the casual players, I feel like it might be just right. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of the transmog system from a video game fashion hunter like myself. In Monster Hunter, always had to have, you know, the layered armors and such. Or even before then, in the earlier Monster Hunter games that you didn't have the layered armors like the transmog and such like that, I would just mix and match my armors just to look cool. I didn't really care what skills they gave me. I just played it that way. The pros with it in Diablo 4, the way to acquire them in game is so good. Whatever thing drops that you get that you can wear, you can deconstruct it at the blacksmith and you will get that look in your wardrobe to be able to add that look over any of the items that you have in your inventory that you have equipped just by going to the wardrobe menu. That was so good. I loved it. I love the fact that you can change the color at will for no fees. There's a lot of games where it's like, oh, you want to change the color of this thing? Give us 1,000 gold. Give us 2,000 gold. Oh, this is the third time that you've colored this thing? Give us 5,000 gold, and it keeps getting higher and higher from there. Now with this one, you can just change it at the wardrobe, no fee. You can do it at any time. They even have a cool thing where you can hold the button down to change that color into all the armor that you have, which is really nice. I like that. The fact that you can turn the transmog on and off in the character menu is very nice also, because if you pick up something and you want to see what it looks like, just turn off the transmog from your menu. All you gotta do is just go up to that item. I think it's hit the X button on the Xbox. It'll take it away, and then you can press it again to put it back on. It's so good. The ensembles menu, which basically is a loadout of your transmogs, so you could just make a couple of them and then swap between them whenever you're in the mood for it. But yeah, transmog, 2 thumbs up. Very, very nice. There are some problems with it though that I'm seeing personally. I would like there to be more colors. I feel like that just having the 1 green, 1 blue, 1 red, 1 purple, you know, things like that, with the vast amount of things that you could do with the coloration, with all the different colors that are in Diablo 4 already. I know it's very dark and gritty and grainy. That's fine. We're not asking for pastels. Maybe some darker pastels that might look cool. But you don't need to have like neon lights or anything. You know, you don't need to have neon colors. But I do think there should be a couple of different variations of reds or blues or greens to be able to choose from. Another problem that I'm seeing is that there's no way to customize that color palette. It only changes specific parts of the armor a certain color. The other ones are already set to their own color with each palette that you select. I would maybe like a way of being able to customize the 4 different colors that are in each palette. So like if you wanted a certain part of the armor a certain color, you could change that part while not having it affect the other one. One thing I'm really confused by, through your wardrobe, you can change makeup, jewelry, markings, and the marking color. You cannot change hairstyles though. It's weird. You can't change hairstyle or hair color through the wardrobe. And they even said, Diablo's team has said that they are looking into adding more customization options for your appearance. Faces, eyes, eye colors, hair, things like that. If they're adding those things but they're not giving us a way to change them, what is the point of adding them? Kind of wish you were able to change the weapons from any type. For me, coming from the barbarian, dual wielding the weapons, the one-handed weapons, like having 2 swords. But what if your weapons are swords but you don't want to have swords? You know, you like the stats that are on those swords, so you want to keep those, but maybe you want to put just the look of an axe over it. It doesn't change anything gameplay wise, so I don't know why that should be a thing. I personally think that could work. I know that there's the abilities where it's like, oh, use any blunt weapon or something like that. The look that you put over, the transmog you put over these items does not change like what the underlying weapon is, so it wouldn't be changing those anyways. I personally think you should let us change a sword into an axe for transmogs or stuff like that, or a mace into a sword, or you know, vice versa. The character customization in Diablo 4 is really, really good as a base starting point. There's a lot more things that they can and should do with this. I love the way that they have these different body shapes for each of the classes, but I really think that they should have those body types open to any of the classes. It'll be a little bit more work, but you should do that for the people that are playing. And the one big gripe that I've had since forever now with Diablo 4 is that stop having hairstyles that are specific to certain classes. Me as a barbarian, I should be able to get the necromancer's hairstyle that's like specific to them. I love that one. Don't like playing the necromancer. I want to play the barbarian. I want that hairstyle as a barbarian. The rogue has a really cool mohawk also that isn't the same as the barbarian's mohawk. I would like to use that on the barbarian, please. I was thinking that the barbarian like body type would be something that you could use with the druid, and possibly even having a barbarian that has the body type of the druid, or even having a barbarian that's the body type of the necromancer. It can still work. You could change it a little bit so it doesn't look so scrawny, but at least have a couple of different body shapes that people can go through, because it's just something to help people feel like they are themselves in the game. You know, all it can do is help people. Now for the world events, I didn't happen upon as many events this time around as I did during the open beta. The open beta kind of seemed like I was tripping over the amount of world events that were going on. Might have been because I didn't have as much time to play as I did back then, and that might have affected it a bit. But the ones that I did find, they seem to start back up really quickly after being done with it. There was a couple of groups that I had where we beat this one. I went up a hill to fight something, just kind of like explore a little bit more. I came back down to loop back through that area and go back up to another area. In the process of looping down through that event was back up, but it was a different event. There was one event that would actually be the same every time I came back across it. There's a few of them that changed, so it's cool that it's able to do that, but it does seem like they were coming back up a lot quicker, and it might be because of the limited amount of time for the beta, so they wanted to make sure that like enough people were able to get into these so they could get as much data from it as they possibly could, which that could work. I can understand that. The events in general were very nicely varied. I thought they were a lot of fun. The objectives that you had to do, and there was an optional objective that would cause you to get a better chest at the end of the event if you completed that. It's definitely worth trying to do the optional mastery objective. So many good things have dropped from me by doing that, and if I happen upon an event and I was the only person there, I wasn't able to get the optional, I didn't get as many good things from it. So I really think that it's worth it to try to get a group together to do those optional mastery objectives. Some of the events were very hard to do if you were solo, or at least a solo barbarian, because the same problem that you have with the bosses being a melee, sometimes it can happen with these events as well. There was an event that I had gotten to where you had to defend 3 NPCs from waves of enemies, and they seem to start in random locations inside the circle, which is nice unless you're a solo melee character and there's nobody else in that area to come and help. I got very unlucky with one of mine because all 3 NPCs spawned at opposite sides of the circle. So I was fighting off one horde, stopping them from killing a guy, and then I heard one of the other NPCs say something, which means they were being attacked. So I had a double dash. I had a piece of armor that gave me the extra dash charge. So double dash, then using leap just to get to them before they were killed. And then fighting them off, then need to do it all over again. And if the cooldowns weren't up, running that whole way back was rough. It's not a big area, but if there's 3 NPCs that you're supposed to be protecting, and all 3 of them are being attacked at the same time, and you have to be in 3 places at once as a melee character with limited mobility, it can get rough, definitely. So overall, the Diablo 4 Server Slam beta was a hell of a lot of fun, challenging enough to cause a Facebook rant, multiple hours of me screaming, "What the f***? Damn it!" Or the old, "Oh, come on!" that we gamers know far too well. The game ran very well and it looked so damn pretty. The mechanics in the game are in a good spot. During the open beta, I played mostly with my wife, who couldn't play during this beta weekend because she wasn't home. She was on a train off to Texas to visit family. So can we get an F in chat for that one? So when the full game comes out, we will be streaming and playing together more often. So maybe my solo challenges just won't really be a thing in the full game, but only time will tell. I can't comment on any other classes because I played a barbarian in this one. And the open beta, I actually chose a necromancer at first because I thought they looked cool. I loved the idea of the necromancer. Never played one of the other ones. But after doing the first tutorial dungeon in Nevesk, I felt like I really wasn't doing anything, and my wave of minions were killing everything before I had a chance to touch them. So I felt bored, and I switched to more of a hands-on class. But I don't know. I might make other classes in the full game, maybe for the seasoned characters, but who knows? So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. It definitely helps our channel be seen by more people. You could also help us with that by sharing this video with your friends, leaving a comment. Tell us what you were able to play in the Server Slam. If you did play, what was your favorite class? What was the class you loved playing as? What did you think of the beta? What did you think? What did you think of the Brood Guard? Do you hate them as much as I do? But with that, thanks so much for being here. I hope to see you guys in the next video. See ya.